All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session where we are going to talk about building personas and lots more. So today we are starting with something that, something a little practical. I'm going to show you a complete example of how to um, take a user persona and turn it into a real product idea, and then connect that idea to the product life cycle, the development life cycle, and the product roadmap. And we have talked about these things, so we're just going to connect dots very well. Now, you might be asking why we're doing this, right? Well, we're doing this because in product management, and this is something I've emphasized since we started, every decision we make should be tied to solving a user problem, and it should also fit into a clear strategy, right? Because this is how you avoid building a random feature or getting distracted by a nice to have idea. Everything you do, every decision you make as a product designer should link back to the user and to the bigger picture, right? So that's what we are going to be looking at today. So let me give you a quick overview of how this walkthrough is structured. First, I'm going to present the user persona I created. I will break it down carefully, explaining why I focused on certain details and how each of those details contributes to guiding product decisions. Next, we will look at the product idea that came out of that persona. I will explain not just what the product idea is, but also how I made sure that the idea is focused okay. So let me just take that again. Next, we'll look at the product idea, that came from the persona, and I'll explain what the product idea is and how I made sure the idea is focused and somewhat practical. Right, and after that, I will map the idea to the product life cycle. I will show you where the product sits in that life cycle and why that matters. Then we will look at where it sits in the product development life cycle, what stage we could be at if this were a real product, right, we were working on. And finally, I will place it on the roadmap. And to basically round off everything, I'll show you how I turned all of this right into something very clear and understandable by anybody. So throughout this walkthrough, I want you to see how each piece flows into the next, right? How a persona leads to a product idea, how the idea fits into the larger life cycle. Who is that? Please don't unmute your mic, guys. All right. And how it shapes your roadmap and how you communicate it in a way that makes sense to others. So we're going to be looking at all of that and more today. Let's just get right into it. Please do not unmute your mic. Thank you very much. So let's start with the persona. The persona I created for this exercise is named Carlos. Right? Carlos is 32 years old. He works as a freelance graphics designer, but here's the thing: freelance design is not his full-time job. He's actually a regular 9-to-5 worker. He has a 9-to-5 job, and he does graphic designs on the side, as a way to earn extra income and to explore his creative side. The reason I chose to focus on someone like Carlos is because he represents a user segment that is extremely common today. We live in an era where people are trying to balance side hustles with full-time jobs. People whose time is stretched, people who are juggling multiple responsibilities, and people who need tools that can help them stay organized without adding more stress to their lives. Now, when I was defining Carlos's persona, I focused on a few key areas that would directly influence product decisions. His goals are very, very clear, as you can see on the screen. Carlos wants to track his time easily. He wants to know how much time he is spending on different projects without having to manually note it down or trying so hard to remember it. And he also wants to get paid faster. He does not want to waste time chasing invoices or calculating how much he is owed, by different persons. His pain points reflect that, as you can see. Carlos struggles from staying organized, especially when it comes to invoicing. The admin side of his freelance work, frustrates him a lot. It takes up too much of his time, and it pulls his focus away from his design work, that he actually enjoys doing. Now, his behavior, as you can see here, supports this as well. Carlos is mobile first. He is someone who is often on the go. He needs tools that he can use on his phone because he's working at odd hours. Maybe he squeezes in freelance work late at night, or maybe early hours of the day, or maybe during his break periods at his 8 to 5, right? He just needs a simple solution that is flexible, quick, and simple. And finally, what would help Carlos? He would benefit from something like a one-tap time tracking, right? He needs automatic invoicing that does the calculations for him, integration with payment services like maybe from Paystack, PayPal, right? All of those things will make it easy for him to get paid without having to think too much about it. Every piece of Carlos's persona is focused on guiding product decision. There is nothing random here. Every detail ties back to what he needs, right? What frustrates him and how a product could make his life easier, right? So now let's look at the product idea that this persona led me to. The product is called Quick Bill. And Quick Bill is a mobile app because remember, Carlos is mobile first. He is on his phone most of the times when he is working on his freelance job. The app allows him to track his time with just one tap. No complex setups, no manual entries, just one tap. And the timer starts. Now it generates invoices automatically as once he has logged his time, the app calculates how much he is owed based on his rate and generates a clean professional invoice that he can send directly to his client. It also integrates the payment feature with PayPal. So once the invoice is sent, the client can pay him easily and the payment goes directly into his account. Now, if you notice what I have done here, I did not add some complicated feature, for example, detailed analytics dashboard or advanced reporting, or even team collaboration tools. I didn't add any of that. Now, not because those features are bad, but because they are not what Carlos needs right now. His immediate problem is time tracking and invoicing. That is what we are trying to solve first. They're not trying to overwhelm him with a lot of other features, right? Next, let's look at where this product sits in the product life cycle. Quick Bill is at the introduction stage of the product life cycle. Okay, we are bringing a new product into the market, a product that is designed to solve a very specific problem for a very specific user, right? Sorry, please confirm you can still hear me.
Yes,
we can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. So yeah, I said that. Thank you. A product that is designed to solve a very specific problem for a very specific user segment, right? This is the stage where we are introducing the concept, starting to build awareness and focusing on delivering the core values that sets the product apart. Understanding this helps us make decisions about what to prioritize at this stage. Our focus is on, getting the core product right, solving the main pain points, and establishing a foundation we can build on later. Now, let us place it in the product development life cycle. Let's place it in product development life cycle. Now, Quick Bill rather would be at the concept or validation phase, right? At this point, we have identified a clear need. We have defined a product idea that could meet that need. And now our next step would be to validate that idea. Validation could mean creating maybe a mock-up or prototypes and testing them with potential users, right? It could mean running surveys or interviews to make sure that the problem we think we are solving is actually the problem our users want to get solved, right? This stage is about learning before building. If you remember what we talked about, it's about testing our assumptions, refining our ideas, and making sure that we are on the right track before we move into full development. Now, looking at the roadmap on the product roadmap, Quick Bill would be positioned as an immediate priority on the roadmap, right? Part of our minimum viable product, our MVP, we are going to talk about that in a bit, right? Why? Because the features we are proposing, time tracking, automatic invoicing, PayPal integration, these are the features that deliver the core value that Carlos, our persona, is looking for. Without these features, the product does not solve his key pain points. You might solve other problems, but this particular persona, you have not solved their key pain points. Now, other features like dashboard or income trend analysis and so on could come in later. But these core features would be what we focus on the first, right, in the roadmap, because they are what makes the product valuable, rather, right from the start. Right from the start, if you have these few features, the product is already valuable to a user segment, right? Every good product idea starts with a clear understanding of the user. It connects directly to solving a problem. And when it does that, the idea then fits into the product life cycle, right? Helping you understand what to prioritize at different stages. It fits into the development life cycle as well by showing you what you should be doing right now, right? Be it validating, building, or even scaling. It also shapes your roadmap, helping you focus on delivering the features that matters the most first. And as a product manager, you need to be able to communicate your thinking clearly and professionally. This is what shows others that you are making thoughtful, strategic decisions, right? That said, to tie this to your current task, right, you should apply the same structure, build your own persona, connect it to a focused product idea, map that idea to the product lifecycle development, right? And then the roadmap as well, and craft a clean professional paragraph communicating your thinking, right? Now, this is like a chit chat for those of us that have not done our tasks yet. Now, everything you submit should reflect what we have learned in class. It should show that you understand how to connect these concepts in a way, that makes sense, not just to you, to other members of your team. All right, everyone. I think at this point, we are finally ready to really dig into a topic that I have made reference to so many times already, and that is the minimum viable product, or you can call it the MVP. Now, throughout the past session, you've probably noticed that I kept using the term MVP. Sometimes when we discussed roadmap, sometimes when we talked about product development lifecycle, or when we looked at personas and product ideas, you've heard me use that a lot. And the reason is because MVP thinking runs through everything we do in product management. As a product manager, you have to have an MVP thinking. You see, building something new, or in this case, building a new product, right? Bringing a new idea to life. It is very, very exciting. This is truly like the most exciting feeling ever for product managers, right? There's nothing like when you have that spark, that vision of something that could solve a real problem for people. The temptation is to want to build everything all at once. You want to pour everything into it, all the features you have imagined in your head, all the ideas you've been holding on to, all those bells and whistles. And I completely understand that urge, right? I've been there. That rush of energy that comes with, creating something that solves a problem for somebody, it's actually very real and intense. And you're not wrong to feel that way. But here's the reality, right? We as product managers, we have to face this very harsh reality. That rush, that excitement, it can be very dangerous for your product, right? If you get carried away by the excitement alone, you might get to build more than you need. You might spend more time, more money, or more resources than you actually have. And worst case, we might build something that our users don't even need, or something that doesn't quite solve their problem in the right way. Now that's where the idea of MVP comes in. The minimum viable product. It is about focus. It's about discipline. It's about stepping back from the excitement and asking yourself, what is the absolute minimum we need to build to test whether our idea is even worth further investment? right? The absolute minimum. Now, what is a minimum viable product? Let's take a moment to go around ourselves in, the proper definition. The concept of MVP was made popular by Eric Rice, who you might know as the author of the Lean Setup, right? According to Rice, a minimum viable product is that version of a product which allows a team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least effort. Now, to put this simply, a minimum viable product or MVP is a product with enough features to attract early adopters. Remember, we talked about adopters to attract early adopters, customers, and validate a product idea early in the product development life cycle, right? Let me repeat that because I want this to really sink. The MVP now is not about building, the smallest products just for the sake of smallness. It's more about building the version of your product that, gives you the maximum amount of information to learn about your customers while also requiring the minimum effort. So it gives you the maximum amount of information, but you use a minimum effort to get that maximum information, right? What does that mean in practice? It means that with an MVP, our goal is not to create something perfect. Our goal is not even to necessarily create something that is beautiful or pretty. Our goal is to create something that tests an hypothesis, right? Something that lets us put our ideas out into the world and see if it holds up, right? At this stage, we are only going to, by theory, get to done, right? The theory that says done is better than perfect, that's the theory we are going to be using at this stage, right? And because we are testing, because we are learning, we want to do this with the smallest and simplest version of the product that still delivers the core value. Please take note of that. Because we are testing this out, because we are trying to learn from this test, what we want to do is to put out the smallest and the simplest version of the product that, in spite of being small and in spite of being simple, it still provides or delivers the core value, of that product. It still does the core thing that that product is supposed to do, right? No extra features, no nice to have, just the essential piece that allows you to observe user behavior, gather feedback, and decide what to not do and what to do, right? That is MVP. Now, before we move ahead, let's talk about what an MVP is not. Now we know what an MVP is. Let's look at what it is not, right? Because this is where I see a lot of confusion, even among people who have worked in product management for a while. First, an MVP is not a proof of concept, right? Or what we often call POC. A POC is all about technical visibility. It's about answering the question that people have, especially people on your team. Questions like, can we build this? Is this technically possible? And so on. A POC does not have to look nice. It does not have, it does not even have to, have a nice interface. Sometimes a POC is something your developers put together to see if the technology really works, right? For example, if you want to build an app that uses, let's say, augmented reality, or an app that just has lots of AI functionalities, your POC might simply be a raw and ugly looking demo to see if your team can get the AR and AI technology to function in the way you imagined, right? Secondly, An MVP is not a prototype, right? A prototype focuses on user interaction. Please, I want us to take note of these things. A prototype focuses on user interaction. It is about, figuring out how users will move through your product, what the flow will look like, how the different parts will fit together, right? A prototype can be as simple as a paper sketch or as complex as an interactive Figma model, right? But its goal is to test the design, not necessarily the viability of the product idea itself, right? I hope we got that. Now, thirdly, an MVP is not the same as a minimum marketable product or MMP. The MMP is the smallest version of the product that you can actually sell, right? It is the version that is stable, functional, and valuable enough that users can and will pay for it. The MMP still might not have all the whole features, but at least it is ready for market. That's the difference, right? MMP is a is the smallest version of the product that is, ready for market. So think of it this way. The POC helps you answer questions like, can we build this? And the prototype helps you answer questions like, how will the user interact with this? And then you move on to the MVP. The MVP answers questions like, does anyone care about, this enough to use it? Are they going to interact with it? And then you have the MMP that answers the question of, will people pay for this? These are different tools for different stages. And depending on your product, you might move through all of these stages, or you might, have to skip some of them, right? Some of them which does not really work for you. What matters is that you know which one you are working on and why you are actually working on that one, right? Please, are we still together? Can you give me a thumbs up so I know that we are still together? A thumbs up, a reaction. All right, thank you very much. Just one. Okay, all right, thank you so much. So let's continue. All right, guys, now that we have a solid understanding of what an MVP is, which of your product that allows you validate, your concepts. Let's move from theory into what you actually do when you're defining your MVP. Because you see, this is where many teams, even the experienced one, can somehow get stuck. They get caught up in the excitement of building or in the pressure to deliver fast, right? And they end up creating something that is either too bloated, that's too big, or too incomplete, right? So to break this down carefully, there are key steps you must take when defining your MVP. These steps, they will help ensure that you're not just building for the sake of building, but that you're building something that truly aligns with your strategy, something that serves your users and sets you up for a meaningful learning of your users as well. Now we have the step one, which is make sure your planned MVP aligns with your business objectives. This is the first and most critical step, and yet it's the one that is so often, rushed over or overlooked. Before you start listing out, features, or before you even start sketching ideas, you need to pause for a minute and think. Does this MVP actually fit where, this is trying to go right now? Right, let's think about this in real terms. What are the strategic goals, your company or your team is working towards. For example, maybe your company has set a revenue target for the next 7 to 8 months. Maybe your leadership has said we're focusing on trying to strengthen our core product line this year. Or maybe you're working, within a tight resources constraint, right? You only have a small budget or a limited development team. All of these realities should shape whether it can even make sense to start developing a new MVP right away. And if it does make sense, they should shape what kind of MVP you are focusing on. So you need to clarify, what is the purpose of this MVP? Is it intended to open up, a new market, maybe a market that is adjacent to where your company is already playing a role? Or is it intended to strengthen your relationship with your existing customers by giving them new functionalities or maybe something they've been asking for, right? These are very, very important distinctions, because let's say, for example, that your company's top priority this year is, deepening your hold in your core market. You just want to strengthen your hold in your core market, right? In that case, it may not make sense to pour your time and energy into an MVP that is aimed at an entirely new set of user segments, right? Or a new industry. That MVP might be interesting, but it's off the strategy and the goal of your company at that point in time. Well, on the other hand, if your company is looking to diversify or expand its user base, then yes, an MVP that tests the waters in a new market could, be exactly the right move for you to take at that point in time. So I want you to see this clearly. Defining an MVP doesn't start with a list of features. It starts with, alignment. It starts with understanding the business's objectives and also making sure that whatever you build fits into those objectives, right? Moving on to step 2, identify specific problems you want to solve or improve, right? And specific problems you want to solve or improvements you want to enable your user, improvements you want to enable for your user persona. Sorry about that. Now, once you are sure that your MVP idea fits the business's strategic goal, then you can start, shifting your focus to your user, right? Once you have a clear picture of, your MVP and the company's strategic goal, now you can shift your focus to your users. This is where you start defining the exact problem you're trying to solve with this MVP, or what specific improvements you're trying to offer to your users. Now, notice that I said specific, because with MVP thinking, we are not trying to deliver the entire product vision, right? We are trying to solve, we're trying to solve every single user problem. We're not trying to solve every single user problem at once, rather. That comes later. And if and when we validate the concept, right, that can come. But if we don't, we are not trying to focus our effort at solving everybody's problem at the moment. Your MVP should focus on delivering a small, meaningful slice of that larger vision. Just enough functionality to test whether your concept resonates with users, right? To do this, you need to lean on all the tools we've talked about in this course. You need to think about your user personas, what are their most pressing pain points, what would make a meaningful difference for them, even in the, basic product. You might, express these ideas as user stories or epics, short descriptions of what your users want to accomplish, and so on. And here's where you have to make some tough decisions, because you will have some ideas that you can include in an MVP that's not the nature of the product, right? This particular phase, that's not the nature. So those interesting ideas of yours might have to wait. So how do you choose what goes into your MVP? Right? You look at factors like, what does your user research tell you is most important to users, right? All the user research you have conducted, what is it telling you is most important to your users? What are your competitors offering? And where can you offer something distinctive, right? Something that is different from what your competitors are offering. Which features can you build and iterate on quickly so you can respond to feedback? What are the relative cost of implementing different features in time, right? In the time you have, with the resources you have, and with the different complexities that you currently have. Your goal at this stage is to identify that, those small set of functionalities that give you the best chances of testing your hypothesis, right? Of learning whether users see value in your idea. It's not about you. In the end, it is about the user, right? And step 3 would be translate your MVP functionality into a plan of development action. All right, so once you've aligned with business objective and once you've zeroed in on the specific problem or improvement your MVP will address, your next step is to translate into a clear development plan. This is where you take the limited functionality you have decided on and work with your development team to turn it into something real. And I want to stress something very important here. The V in MVP stands for viable. That means your MVP must be a working product, right? It must allow your users to complete a whole task or project from start to finish. It must deliver value. That is the whole sense of MVP. Your MVP must deliver value. It cannot be a collection of, have-built features. It cannot be a nice looking interface that does not actually let the user accomplish anything, right? It cannot be something that frustrates the user because it feels broken or incomplete. They click here, it's not clickable. They do this, it's not working. Your MVP needs to deliver a high quality user experience. Even if that experience is limited in scope, it needs to work. And it needs to work well enough that users can give you a meaningful feedback on it. They need to be able to use something that works to be able to give you a meaningful feedback, right? So when you build your development plan, think about things like, what does a complete, emphasis on complete now, what does a complete task look like for this MVP? How will we make sure the experience is smooth, even if the product is simple, right? How will we test and validate that the MVP is ready to be put in the front lines of user, right? Because remember, the MVP is not the end. It is the beginning of your learning journey. It's the beginning of you trying to understand your user, right? It is the tool that helps you gather the insights you need to deliver what to build next. And if you launch an MVP that is broken or confusing or even half-baked, you won't get good insights. And remember, you're backing on these insights, right, to be able to improve, right? If you get your users frustrated at the very beginning, you're not going to get a good feedback or good insights, right? Now, I hope that made sense. Putting everything I have said together, defining your MVP is a strategic exercise. It requires you to understand your business's objectives, right? it requires you to understand your users' needs, and it requires you to have the discipline to say, we will build just enough to learn, no more, no less. We are going to build something good enough that is just going to help us learn, and then we are going to iterate from there. When you do this particular part well, you end up with a product that helps you learn fast, a product that helps you adapt, and one that helps you build something that your users actually want, instead of something you assumed they wanted or something they needed. Now, this is the power of MVP thinking, right? In your future work, I want you to always come back to these steps in all you do. Align with business objectives, focus on specific user problem, build something viable, and don't forget to learn about your users from all of these processes, right? I hope we are still together. So moving on to PRD, Product Requirement Document, right? And now that we've gone through defining our MVP and you have a sense of what it means to scope and prioritize what you want to build, the next important tool I want to introduce to you is something called the Product Requirement Document, or PRD for short. This document is absolutely fundamental in helping you translate that MVP idea, or any feature really, into something that your development team, your Q&A team, your project managers, and frankly, any stakeholder involved, they can look at the PRD and just align with it as well. So I want to walk you through what a PRD is, what purpose it serves, what goes inside it, and how you, as a product manager, can approach creating one that truly adds value to not just you, but to your team as well. So what is a product requirement document? Let's start from the top, right? A product requirement document, or PRD, is what I like to call the product manager's best friend, right? It is a document that lays out clearly and in detail what a product team is expected to build in an upcoming release, right? It is usually created before development starts. So you, as the product manager, typically, you drive this. But I also want to stress right away that it is a collaborative document, right? The product manager lead the effort, but it is not done in isolation, right? The PRD communicates to the development, the testing, and various teams. It answers lots of questions, right? Now, note that in traditional waterfall environments, the PRDs tend to be especially central, because those waterfall environments are somewhat sequential, right? Somewhat sequential, right? You define everything upfront, design everything, then build and deliver. So the PRD is like a key artifact in guiding that process. Now, it is static, right? But even in agile setting, and I want to emphasize this because I know many of you will work, in agile teams, because that's the age we're in currently. PRDs still play an important role. They just tend to be a lot lightweighted, right? They are lighter than when it used to be in the era of the waterfall these days, right? They are more iterative and more adaptable, but the idea is still the same. The PRD helps ensure that when, we ship something, it meets the agreed upon requirements. It meets the agreed upon requirements. Now, why does the PRD matter so much? And why have I spent this time drilling into it? And why should you, as product managers, care deeply about getting this document right? But let me break it down a bit clearly. First of all, a PRD provides clarity when it's done well, right? It prevents all kinds of misunderstandings and confusions about what's being built. Think about all the people involved in shipping even a small feature. You have engineers writing the code, the Q&A folks test, right? Designers are there to polish the user interface for you. And you have your marketing team getting ready to talk about it to prospects. Right? A clear PRD makes sure that all of those people are aligned on what we are trying to achieve. Nothing is left out. Nobody is guessing, right? Nobody is working off of assumptions, that could take them off the course. Now, secondly, the PRD aligns the team. A good PRD isn't just a checklist of feature, right? It connects what the team is building to the broader product strategy and, of course, business objectives as well. It ensures that we are putting all this time, it ensures that what we are putting in all this time and effort into actually moves the needs, right? It moves every need for the business and delivers value to the user. Without that alignment, it's easy to end up with features that work, right, technically, but does not matter to your customers or does not really help your business meet its goals, right? Now, thirdly, the PRD serves as a reference point. This is so important. As development moves forward, new ideas are going to come up. Challenges will also arise. People will be suggesting tweaks or enhancements that are going to come in. The PRD at this point is going to be the tool you use to check, is this new idea in scope? Does it fit with what we agreed to build? Or is it something we should save for later there's something we call future features, right? Should we put it in the list of the future features, right? So the PRD helps you stay disciplined and focused even as the work, is evolving. And the PRD sets the course for a successful release. It helps make sure that what gets delivered at the end of all of this actually meets the needs of the customers and the business, right? You can call it the blueprint, right, that guides the team from the idea to the vision down to executing. Mary, please stop writing on my screen. Thank you. Control your cursor. Now let's move on and talk about what a PRD should contain, right? I want you to be able to sit down after this class and write, a good PRD. What a PRD should concern. Who is this person? Guys, please be careful not to write on the screen. Thank you. All right, let's continue. What a PRD should contain. Number one, purpose or overview. Every PRD begins with a clear purpose or an overview, right? This is where you explain what this release is aiming to achieve, right? But another word you can use for release is launch, right? When you're trying to launch your product, right? This helps you explain what the release is trying to achieve, what problems we are solving, what opportunities we are seizing, and how does this fit into the broader product or business strategy. So that is the purpose and overview that should come first in your PRD. Now, let me be clear. This is not where you copy paste your market requirement document, right? We also have something called the market requirement document. If you have one, this is not where you copy and paste that, right? The MRD might cover multiple releases or even your whole product line. The PRD is more focused. It is specific to, a particular release. It tells the team, this is why we are building this at this time, right? Imagine you're working on a ride-sharing app. Your next release focuses on adding a feature that lets users schedule rides in advance. The purpose section of your PRD would explain that this feature exists to address a major user pain point, the need for guaranteed transportation at a guaranteed time, right? It would explain how this helps to retain users and compete with other apps that already has this feature. Now, this section gives everyone the context they need, right? It answers that fundamental question of why are we building this? Now, the second thing is the features or capabilities. This is the heart of your PRD, right? Here is where you list every explicit capabilities that must be included in the release for it to be considered complete. You don't stop at high-level features. At this point, you're able to break them down into enough details so that your engineer and other team know exactly what is expected. They are not guessing and they do not misinterpret because you are going to break them down clearly. By you, I mean you as the product manager. Now, for each capability, you provide a use case, a description of how a user would actually interact with that feature. Now, this isn't just helpful for building the feature, right? It's essential for testing and validating. It tells your Q&A, that Q&A means quality assurance, right? Q&A team exactly what success looks like or what success will look like, right? If you have complex features, you have to break them down into sub-items and yes, provide use cases for each of those sub-items as well, right? Let's say with that ride scheduling that we used as an example, one capability might be user can select a future date and time for their ride. A sub-item might be apps prevents user from selecting a date or time in the past. The user case will describe how the user picks the date and the time and what the app should do in response, right? Such as showing an error message if they try to select a time that has passed or elapsed, right? I hope that makes sense to us. Now, the third thing that you should also consider is systems, environmental usability requirements. Beyond core functionality, your product needs to meet certain technical and user experience standard. This is where you document those, right? Under these, this next point is where you document all of those standards. System requirements might include things like the app must support Android version so or higher, or the app must work on devices with screens as small as maybe 4 inches, right? Those are requirements, systems requirements. Now, environmental requirements might include things like browser compatibility for web apps. Say it must work on Chrome, Firefox, or Safari, right? It must work on those browsers. Now, usability requirements are also critical. Maybe your app must support one-handed navigation. Maybe it must meet certain accessibility standards so it can be used by people with disabilities, maybe. Now, those requirements make sure your product delivers not just functionality, but a great experience for everyone who uses it. And then this is where you move to assumptions. You move to assumptions, constraints, dependencies, right? This is where you lay out the realities you're working with. Assumptions are things you're counting on that might not be guaranteed, right? You're making an assumption. Just see it like typically making an assumption of something. You're making an assumption. Maybe you assume your users have reliable internet access. Maybe you assume they are familiar with, basic app interactions. Constraints are the limits you're working under. Maybe you have a hard deadline because of a marketing launch. Maybe you're restricted to certain technologies, or maybe your budget is tight, right? That is the constraints we are looking at. And then the dependencies are the external elements your product relies on. Maybe your app depends on a third-party API, or maybe your features can't ship until another team delivers a key component. Maybe it's dependent on one person, it's dependent on a designer to do a particular thing, the developers are waiting, those are the dependencies that we are referring to. Now, documenting these will help everyone understand what could impact your success and where the possible risks are, right? Now, I hope we are still together, right? Are we still together?
Yeah, very much together.
All right, thank you very much. So, number 5, we look at the release criteria and timeline, right? This is where you define what done means, right? When you say we are done, what do you mean, right? What acceptance criteria must be met for the product to be ready to ship? Maybe it's you have some requirement that it needs to passing a certain set of Q&A test. Maybe it's meeting performance benchmark. You have a benchmark that, okay, if this app is able to create, if somebody is able to order a ride, that means we are done. If somebody is able to book a ride, that means we are done, right? Maybe it's getting a certain score in your user acceptance testing. Maybe you want to go higher than 80%, right? Maybe that's the definition of done for you. And of course, you lay out the timelines, right? At least at a very high level. When are you aiming to launch? When are you aiming to ship this product out there? What are the key milestones along the way, etc., etc. Now, when you sit down to write your PRD, keep this in mind, right? Your ultimate goal should be clarity and alignment. You're now like the bridge between the business goals, the user needs, and the technical execution, right? You're like the bridge that is guiding everyone. Your job is to make sure everyone understands what they are building, why they are building it, and what success looks like. I have said this countless times. I think I've said it in almost all of our classes. You have to make everyone understand what you're building, why you're building it, and the success, what success looks like when you're done. So yeah, and don't be afraid to update your PRD, especially in an agile environment. Your PRD should evolve as you learn. A living document, right? And that's okay. That's how you make sure that it stays relevant, right? Your PRD stays relevant because it is a living document. It is not like the days of the waterfall, right? Where it is static. You do it before you start building. This one is the agile, so it is a living document. So we are going to take questions now, right? Do we have any question? No, I don't want to overflow us, right? we're going to take questions. So we have talked about PRD. PRD is more like your key tool for communication, alignment, and delivering a product that truly meets the needs of your users and business. A good PRD helps ensure that what gets built is what was intended, that what gets tested is what the users actually need. And also what gets shipped, that is what gets launched, is what will move your product and business forward, right? So do we have any questions? Said this is getting challenging. Interesting. Okay, I like that. I like that. So do we have any questions? We'll just take 5 minutes and take questions. Just use 5 minutes and take questions. Is this to say that we understand everything I have said so far? That'll be very interesting. I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay. All right then. So this, let me stop the recording. This will be the end. Okay.